pod, and it's beautiful. It's gorgeous here. It's so fancy. Much fancier than I was wanting. No, I'm just kidding. It's exactly.
Thank you all again. That was the second block, and I want to invite all of the filmmakers who are here to have a seat and moderator, and we'll do a little Q&A.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks everyone for staying around for the Q&A. So we have Efram Hawke, who made Endocast, a non-linear memoir. Matt Whitman, today is a very special day sometimes. Jung, who made These Kids Don't Get It Ma. Matt McKinzie, who made Queer Dream Triptych. And Ezri Appel, who made February 14th. So if you come down. Well, yeah, congratulations on all the film. I think it's an incredible program, beautiful films individually and really well curated. So just to start with, I'd love, I'll open it up to your questions, but just so everyone has a chance to speak initially, I'd love it if you just talk about the spark of inspiration and what compelled you to make each of your films.
Hi.
You might want to introduce yourselves first of all, and maybe just say the name of your film, just so everyone knows who's who.
Okay. I'm Efram. I made Endocast. The inspiration for it is kind of all over the place. It was just like a series of diary entries, and then I made a video to go with it, and it became what it is now.
Let's just go down the line, yeah. That's probably easy.
I'm Ezri Appel. I directed February 14th, and I just really wanted to make something with my friends, and I was really inspired by their love and their relationships, and yeah, that's the main inspiration.
I'm Matt McKinzie. I made Queer Dream Triptych. The film really originated as this poem that I wrote, and the chief inspiration was this great film by Lynn Sachs called Atalanta, 32 Years Later, in which she remixes found footage from this children's TV series that Marlo Thomas had in the 70s called Free to Be You and Me, and she queers the narrative by scrambling the footage and messing with the audio and then writing a lesbian love story in caption form over this footage. And so when I found this found footage by Donald Fox, I really felt like it spoke to this poem that I had written, and so I revisited it and sort of amalgamated the two.
Hey, I'm Matt Whitman. I did Today is a Very Special Day Sometimes. And that film came about through, I was going through belongings of a loved one that had passed away, and kind of found myself drawn to certain parts of that process and things that they had left behind. And so kind of made the film as part of that process.
Hi, I'm Jung. I did These Kids Don't Get It Ma. I think I started because I was thinking a lot about subtitles, and I grew up in South Korea, so I grew up watching a lot of English films with subtitles, so that was kind of a natural part of film for me. And I think I was just thinking about the experiences I was having, finding myself divorced from my first language. It felt like I was having a lot of English experiences, and that my transness, my queerness was defined in English.
Great. I'd love to hear a bit more about how you decided on the form of the film. Perhaps you could touch on the visual language and flow of each of your films.
So mine was edited in a way, I have short-term memory loss. So it was edited in a way where it was really fragmented and out of order. It was like all from past few years of my life that was kind of hard. And then ultimately when I came out, everything was significantly better. So it's basically like a scrapbook for me. I guess the context is lost on everybody, but yeah, that's kind of it.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, I worked with my DP, Alex. He's here in the audience, and he's going to be at the party. And he definitely helped me with creating, like the visual language and editing the story together. And we had a lot of similar inspirations, and that's kind of why we worked together on this. And yeah.
I mean, for me, it's a found footage piece, so much of the visual language was already kind of apparent in Donald Fox's footage, but his piece runs 15 minutes long, so it was a lot about taking that and pulling it apart and reordering it and making it sort of align with what I was trying to get at in this poem, and then condensing it down into the duration of the poem, which is only about 3 minutes. So that was where I guess a lot of the visual language and flow came from.
For the piece I made, I found myself when I was going through a lot of this stuff in this house, kind of finding myself drawn more to like screens, like things that were like digital artifacts, like rather than clothes and things like that. And so I found myself kind of looking at the person's phone that they had left behind, and like the different memories and things that were on there, and trying to preserve that in some way.
I think the form kind of came from the subtitles that I kind of wanted to like inject like Frankenstein's monster style life into the subtitles, so that it kind of I think the form kind of came to me when I had this idea of like taking the voice away but like keeping the subtitles. So it was kind of like telling all of you English speaking audience here that like, from the beginning of the film, you've just been reading the subtitles. Like you weren't really listening to my voice. You don't understand what I'm saying. And then like once that's gone, the subtitles kind of jump free from the bottom and can be its own thing. Yeah.
Does anyone have a question yet that they'd like to ask? Just raise your hand if you have a... Yeah, go ahead.
I want to follow up on your translation aspect of the piece. And
Wait, we can't hear.
I can repeat it. Yeah, just asking about the translation aspect of The Kids Don't Get It, Ma.
I mean, it's something I've noticed as we're all watching all the evenings I've been here. There's this new language that we do have when you're watching a piece of art, and it's subtitled by some other, and it says things like eerie music, and you're like, what is it eerie? I don't know. Yes, I guess it's eerie. There's a translation thing that happens in our new medium that we live within, like in our phones and everything that we're seeing. So I really appreciated the fact that you sort of were taking it and bringing my consciousness to that line of text that I'm sort of distracted by constantly. So I felt that was very vibrant for me at this moment. There's something about text being distracting us from image, and so the fact that you pulled me back up, it became an image. I really appreciate that.
And was there a question, or you just wanted to compliment, really? Okay, that's fine. That's good. Questions or compliments, yeah. Or controversial statements, yeah.
Yeah, should I respond to that? Yeah,
Please.
Thank you. I think we, I'm only 24, I'm very young. And I think our generation especially, we grew up with text a lot. We grew up with a lot of, and like on TikTok or any other social media, there's always kind of caption front and center. And I always found it kind of strange how growing up, for me, everyone that I sort of encountered were very averse to subtitles, and like, I don't want to watch foreign films because of this text. And now everyone would rather read text on screen rather than watch the actual thing.
Yeah, go ahead. I think a mic's coming to people now, so just wait for the mic to come to you.
Hello. Was there any healing process in building the art that all you guys created?
Yeah, mine was definitely like an active, like processing a lot of stuff. It was all like stream of consciousness writing that I had done for like a few years. And in that it did really heal a lot. And now when I watch it, it's just kind of like nothing really affects me anymore.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of resonates like with when I kind of started writing this or thinking of this concept. It was like in the winter, kind of like around this time a couple years ago, and I was just like pretty lonely and sad that I was single on Valentine's Day. And like the city's just like cold, and I was feeling like a lot of my warmth and like love from my friends. So I guess it was like healing in that way to be with them and like film their romance and like get that love personally.
And it's such a nice contrast to the Hallmark cards and the heart balloons and all of the things that bombard us.
Yeah, healing was a huge part of the creation of this. The origin of the poem sort of came out of this traumatic sexual experience that I had that then was followed by like a psychosomatic illness that was then followed by a really severe period of depression. And then after kind of going through that, the poem sort of came out of me, and then it's been something that I've revisited over the years. It was originally published back in 2020, and then I made this last year. So it's been really, the creation of it, an ongoing healing process.
Yeah, just to echo, I mean, that my film also was very much like that. It was I made it during when we were, there were still lockdowns and feeling very isolated and doing this task of cleaning out someone's belongings after they'd passed away. And I think a lot of my own kind of struggles with mental health, past and then present at the time, really kind of were sort of coming out in shadows of what I was seeing and what I was doing. And so that's sort of how I wanted to sort of intervene in the spaces and the task I was doing.
What's I think weird, what was weird for me was that when I started, it really wasn't about transness at all. It was really just about mainly language and the sort of, like when I was talking about Jung and oppa, the sort of like pronoun confusion, it was more like, I wanted to just highlight the like, I guess like fissures in language, but then I think as I kept working on it, I kind of had a pretty bad few days that kind of dropped me into a hole, and that's where I found that whole strobe section, and I think the language that was fracturing me instead. And so what I was trying to sort of get at with language, it was coming back at me, and by the end of it, I think I got through a lot of what I hadn't really confronted before. And I actually showed this film to my mother, and she cried and asked me to translate the second half for her, and I didn't. I can't. I don't think I can.
Anyone else have a question? Yeah, at the front there. I think a microphone's going to come down to you. Yeah, just so everyone can hear at the back.
First of all, major praise to all five of you, and like huge kudos for keeping the messages of Free to Be You and Me alive in some format. I had a question about Endocast in the beginning, noticing a juxtaposition of the Disney poison apple and a snake and an apple that looked biblical. I mean, was that a tie-in with sort of a poison apple of patriarchy and misogyny that gets fed to kids by Disney and that sort of thing? I was curious about that process.
Sort of. When I was making it, I was going, like, all those photos were either from my cell phone or photos I've taken in college or after, and I found like this fake snake on the sidewalk once, and it was just like coiled around like a tree fence or something, and one of my friends thought it was real, so she screamed, but I thought it was kind of cool. But when choosing imagery, I was sort of trying to put a narrative in, like, I guess like sort of true to I guess sort of what you were saying, but like it felt like there was like a moment when I was like dating like this straight man that I like bit the apple and was like, oh wait, I'm gay. And so that sequence was kind of like the moment of like, okay, Snow White's just gonna eat the poison apple, but it's not really like poison. It just felt like, oh, I I did something to like trigger this. I don't know, something like that. Yeah.
Any more audience questions? There's one at the back.
First, thank you very much for presenting your films. I must say, having been part of the festival since its beginnings, and having been here just to the 9 o'clock screenings of the last 3 days, it's disconcerting to see how much trauma is being expressed, and so my question is, where do you reside the pleasure, and where is the sexuality? Where is the sexual expression that is beyond political, environmental concerns or gender identity? Where does to a generation that I think was much more interested in a sexual expression, I'm just wondering, where do you place your pleasure?
You know, I don't even know how to answer that well.
There's a very hopeful, uplifting ending, I think, to your film.
Yeah.
Which I loved. Sorry. After telling everyone they needed a microphone, I was just saying there was a very hopeful, uplifting ending to the film, which I really loved, found very moving.
Thank you. Yeah. I guess the pleasure for me was just being myself, just being able to do it without having like overwhelming anxiety about literally everything. Yeah.
I feel like that's like, I don't know, that's kind of like why I made this project, because I like wanted to show like the beauty and love and just like make queer love in like this beautiful light, personally. Like, so I feel like that is what I feel like I like accomplished, and like I didn't really like dive into the sadness or queerness per se, but it's like or like explaining queerness or anything. It just is, and I just wanted to show that, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with this poem being this sort of arc of healing, as far as locating the pleasure, I mean, I don't know. It sort of just was something that, I don't know, came from deep within my own subconscious from this experience that was informed by trauma. But I mean, the poem ends with the words, "I am okay, I'm okay." So it's like this arc towards this kind of deliverance and this beginning of being my queerest self and stepping into that. So I think that's certainly the source of pleasure in it. And I also like talk about Kate Bush and Patti Smith and Vashti Bunyan, and those are, you know, I certainly found joy and those high priestesses of song. So, and that certainly informed a lot of my queer identity and sexuality and feeling sort of affirmed in that. So, yeah.
Yeah, in my film, I guess that film and a few of them that kind of happened around the same time all came from losing several people close to me. One who was one of the only queer relatives I had, and I think and someone, you know, that just someone I could talk to, and I think that just being able to like remember someone, you know, and to have a way of you know, like having something exist as a kind of body even after they're gone. There's like a kind of hopefulness and sort of a happiness in that for me was important in making the film.
I think my sexuality is mostly in my bedroom. In this film, I think because it's implicitly and explicitly addressed to my mother, I didn't want to say everything, but I do, you know, I think have lines like, what was it? I now open my mouth like a professor of a language born of spit among spit, and I think if you put the images together, there, you can find the sexuality within it. But I didn't want to, in a film that's called like These Kids Don't Get It, Ma, and then say like, oh yeah, I'm sucking and fucking.
Yeah. We have time for one more question.
Okay. Yeah, a mic's going to come to you if you just keep your hand up.
So I want to follow up on Peter's comment because I'm part of the older generation who's been involved with a lot of experimental film and what we used to say is gay film, which is now like queer film. I was really, and I say this in a positive sense, looking at all these films. So this is a comment and then kind of a question. I was struck and really shocked in a positive way by how much you all externalized your interior struggles on the screen. I think that's an act of vulnerability. I'm not a filmmaker, but I'm a curator, et cetera. That is, I think, very pronounced because I think there's a generational discussion here. It seems that these kinds of traumas of all of you kind of at that age expressing sort of similar struggles was something just very sort of kind of new, I think, and refreshing. And in terms of the pleasure, I would just ask the question to kind of counter what Peter says. Not being a filmmaker, but hearing filmmakers speak, isn't the pleasure not only in the healing, but the pleasure of making the film? And that it's really a question, it seems to me that this is more a question, the films you showed are more an issue, not so much of sex acts, even sexuality, as of defining your identity. Would you agree with that or disagree?
So it's essentially the pleasure is in the making of the film.
And in identity.
Okay, and in identity. Thank you.
Yeah, for me it was very therapeutic, and it, yeah, I think like what I said before, maybe go through like a whole archive of stuff I have, and yeah, it is a movie about like coming out and like transitioning and things like that. So like just like looking at myself like progress, I guess, as I was making it, and then coming to like the conclusion of like, oh, I'm finally like relieved and happy. Yeah, just seeing it all together in one movie like really like makes it like sorry, I'm like a stutterer.
Just because you haven't mentioned it, can I just ask why you picked Gwyneth Paltrow, AI Gwyneth Paltrow?
Well, first, her voice is really soothing, and at the time of making it, I was still getting my master's, and I was using Speechify to like read stuff to me, and then I was like, oh, it would be so funny if Gwyneth Paltrow like read my trauma dump. That'd be so funny. And so I put it in Speechify and like listened to it, and I was like, wow, this sounds pretty good. And that's how that came to be.
To answer that question, making the film and like it was really healing and amazing, because I haven't like made a film before this for some time, so I was like really, really excited to make a project on film with my friends, because like even just like making something on film is like, it's just like such a process, and it's like you have to like really work together, and it's like a really intimate experience. And yeah, so I feel like making it was like so much of it and like so much of my healing, for sure.
Yeah, the process of making it, I mean, because it's a found footage piece, and I didn't really collaborate with anyone on the film, and it was a really private creative process, and I sort of almost wrote the poem and then made the film really kind of for myself and didn't think much about, it was all about that process of making and experiencing my own catharsis through that privately. Yeah.
I think to answer that too, I would say there was kind of sort of like the dream I had of being able to just kind of float above my body and just kind of see everything sort of abstractly from myself. And so putting all of that, all of the fears and things that I was trying to forget and things I was trying to remember, and just to put it in some place to be able to see it sort of externally, kind of achieve that goal.
Yeah, I first want to actually thank you for bringing up the vulnerability aspect of it, because I think personally, every time I screen this film, it feels like I'm getting undressed in front of everyone. And I almost had a panic attack before the screening because I was so nervous of how many people were going to be here. And definitely I agree with everyone in saying that it was healing and it was vulnerable, and all those were true. But also I think the point of experimental films for me personally is in the word experiment, and sexuality, identity, it all happens through experiments. Every shot here and every word, I workshopped every cut of it and the timing of it so many times, and that was really fun for me. I liked moving it around and it feeling film is controlling time, so it felt like I could sort of, it was empowering in many ways, and also so much of the film was archival, and I did catch a bit of archive fever, and I don't know if people are gonna get that reference, and it was joyous. I was going through all those moments that were good, and thinking about those moments that were good, and focusing on the good parts. And I think after the sort of event that triggered me to, or led me to make that whole strobe sequence, I wrote that section, and then I knew to myself I couldn't end it there, and I had to write the epilogue where it was but all of these things that are the good parts, so yeah.
Well, thanks very much for all being here, showing there's such a great audience for queer experimental film here in New York, and congratulations and thanks again to all the filmmakers, and we'll see you at the party tonight.